boom. Sup, everyone. We got Joey D, and I'm Timmy B, and welcome to this episode of the Flea Flicker, where we will be recapping the Week 4 action of the NFL season, and then choosing our pick or predicting our pick for the Week 5 Thursday night football game. But before we get started, Joey D, how are you, my friend?
Tim, it's another great day down here in Columbia, South Carolina. A little
Ooh.
rainy, but we're still in the city of dreams, and I'm actually going to this Eagles Panthers game this Sunday, so I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a really fun weekend. So I've just been looking forward to it. Got my brother John Michael coming down. Also,
Jamaica.
shout out to another John Michael's been on the Flea
He's been
Flicker,
on
I believe,
it.
once. Shout out another two of our guests, James Taylor, resident Giants fan, and Alex Fabregat, resident Panthers fan, also coming down for the game. And we're all squadding up, going to Charlotte and watching the Eagles take down the Panthers in person.
and we will definitely be picking that game this weekend, as well as we will dissect the Panthers trade when we get to their game in just a second, because big time Dre. Now, before we hop into the recap, Joe, how was the matchup between you and me in fantasy this past week?
Tim, shout out once again our aforementioned Alex Fabregat for just trading you two players that outscored my entire team this week. Were you what 1-3, 1-2 prior to that game?
I did not have a good record. I needed
I
to
was
make a
3 and
trade.
0.
I
Were
needed
you 0
some.
were you 0-3?
No, I think I won. I think I won 1 week, but I needed some wide receivers. Traded for Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel, and they scored 77 points. And going into Monday, Joe had 79 points. So needless to say, I won by a healthy margin.
Really unfortunate. I went up against Tyreek Hill in two of my leagues this week, and one of the leagues I went up against him, I had Terry McLaurin, and the other one I had Austin Eckler. So it didn't matter. They both had great games. I
Hey,
still lost.
that's
Oh
why
man,
that's why we play the games, and that's why we
that's
do
right.
fantasy football. But hopping in to the first game, before that, again, before three befores, hit that thumbs up button to like this video, and hit that subscribe button as well to support the channel for me and Joey D to continue making some amazing content. Now, Joe, Bears Lions. Bears defeat the Lions 24-10. We both picked the Lions. We were drinking a little of the juice up there in Detroit, and well, it turns out the Bears actually aren't that terrible when Justin Fields is the starting quarterback. And Lions once again are a bad football team.
Yeah, Justin Fields had a really good game. Definitely compared to his last game.
Mhm.
I from what I understand, I think Bill Lazor was calling the plays this week. I'm
And it's
not sure if
about
that.
it's about a 9 point difference from what he calls and when Matt Nagy is calling. I think he averages about 26, 27, and Matt Nagy averages about 18 points when he's the play caller. So it's about a 9 point difference.
Wow. And I believe Justin Fields today was named the starter
It,
going forward.
yes, he
So,
was. Finally.
that's I know. I mean, that's just huge to design the offense around him and let him get that chemistry with the ones and that development moving forward to really get a good look at what you have in Justin Fields. I mean, he had some really good chemistry with Darnell Mooney, who Tim also managed to have and start against me in our fantasy league that week. So that was great. Allen Robinson didn't do anything for me in one league I had him, so that was wonderful. You love to see that. Um, but hopefully Allen Robinson, Justin Fields kind of pick up that chemistry because Allen Robinson is such a good wide receiver. David Montgomery had a really good game. Went down with what looked like a really serious knee injury. It doesn't look like he'll be out for the season. He'll be back at some point, but right now it's the Damian Williams show.
Playoff
So
Damien.
go get Damian in all your fantasy leagues. I sure did. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bears do moving forward now with Justin Fields as the guy. But tough loss for the Lions after really playing well against some quality teams. I really thought that this was a game that they could get Dan Campbell his first career win, but alas, they're still looking for it.
Yeah, it'll come soon. It'll come when we don't pick them. Of course, that's just how it works. So
Of course.
Justin Fields, now the starter, gets his first win in the NFL, and now the Bills defeated the Texans 40-0, which was as expected, and Mitchell Trubisky even scored a touchdown. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Bills Texans game.
Yeah, I mean, Davis Mills, he looked okay, like, on Thursday Night Football against Carolina, but just didn't wasn't able to get anything going on offense this week against the Bills. Bills have very good defense and a great offense to go
Mhm.
along with it. They can beat you so many different ways. And they didn't overlook the Texans this week, because this now on Sunday, I believe Sunday Night Football, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh yeah.
they're taking on Kansas City. So Texans could have been a trap game. They didn't overlook them. They dominated them, and that's what good teams do. So they're riding high going into a game against a weak or weaker looking Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to good teams that should put away lesser opponents in just a few games because we even talked about that in our preview. But yeah, Bills Chiefs, it's going to be a fun test for this Bills defense. Not saying that they haven't really been tested this year, but Ben Roethlisberger Steelers week one. I mean, the Davis Mills Texans, the Taylor Heineke football team. So yeah, and they injured Tua as well. So they haven't really been tested, but of course now going on the road to Patty Mahomes and co. It'll be a fun little test for that defense, but I think it's going to be a fun shootout game given the Chiefs defense currently.
Yeah.
Speaking of that football team, they went down to Atlanta and they were down pretty late in the game, 30 to 28, even 30 to 22. Football team scores a touchdown, don't get that 2-point conversion, but then they score again. JD McKissick leaps in the end zone. He jumped from like the 5-yard line, hopped
Yeah.
all the way in. Football team wins 34 to 30 against the Falcons. And Joe, we both predicted the football team to win, but we said that this is a good game for the defense to get back on track, and they still gave up 30 points to the Falcons.
That's right. And you know what? While we're still talking about, some fantasy stuff that went wrong for Joey D this weekend, in my big money league, I had Calvin Ridley and I went up against Cordero Patterson.
Oh
So
no.
what in the world, Washington? How do you let Cordero Patterson score 3 touchdowns? And, you did great holding off Calvin Ridley. Good job there. And, you just let this guy go off. So love to see it if you're my opponent. But, it was a rough game for the Washington defense, for that reason. I mean, like I said, they did a good job limiting Calvin Ridley. Kyle Pitts didn't, we still haven't seen him really have a breakout performance. But they who could have known, you got to stop Cordero Patterson. That should have been their first move from the jump. I mean, you got
Mhm.
to prepare because he's clearly this, unseen before weapon who can play wide receiver or running back. God. Um, so it was an emotional win for Taylor Heineke in Washington. That was kind of like what we said with that's the Ryan Fitzpatrick-esque type of play you can get from Taylor Heineke. He's a little bit erratic, can have some big plays, and he can gut out some emotional wins, and the team seems to rally behind him and fight for him, and that's what matters at the end of the day. So big win for Washington. In a weekend where they really couldn't afford a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Cordero Patterson. I think even before going into this game on Sunday, I saw some stats saying that if you just took his rushing stats, he was like running back number 15 in fantasy football. And if you just took his receiving stats, he was like number 18 for wide receivers. So it's crazy that a decade later, Cordero Patterson has kind of finally figured it out down in Atlanta in Arthur Smith's offense. So, yeah, big win for the football team. And now going to the other NFC East team that got a win on the road on an NFC South opponent. We got our friend James Taylor's and Eric Sawyer's and a bunch of other of our listeners. New York Football Giants going down into Jameis Land, winning 27 to 21 in overtime. Saquon Barkley had a huge touchdown in the fourth quarter and in overtime to win the game. Didn't like what I saw from the Saints. I mean, Taysom Hill had a touchdown, bad game from Jameis Winston. The Giants defense stepped up, and Daniel Jones played great. Saquon played great. And this is what they should be, but they just can't be that consistent. They'll look really good this week. And then next week, they're just going to look like they don't know what they're doing.
That's right. And, once again, Joey D made a fantasy mistake and started the Saints defense because they were facing the future Giants offense. And what
Right.
did they get me? -3 points. So that was great as well. But, props to the Giants. Daniel Jones and this Giants offense really played one of their best and most complete games. I don't think there were any turnovers on their part. Defense did a really good job of limiting the big plays and limiting Alvin Kamara, and like you said, forcing Jameis into not a very good game. It's interesting because they were without, I believe, both Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton in this game. So Kadarius Toney got some more work. Saquon was seeing the ball in a little bit different ways and some receptions.
Mhm.
And Kenny Galladay was also being fed a little bit more. So I know when Kadarius Toney was initially drafted, my buddy who we just talked about, James Taylor, his biggest concern was if we're drafting this guy, then he's taking away touches from Saquon Barkley. And right now, when the Giants have all these receivers and they're at like full force, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and it seems like they're just trying to give it to all these different people and not really feed the hot hand like they need to. So, having some of those guys missing, like Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, helped. Kadarius Toney, I believe, had like 7 catches in this game. Kenny Galladay, we saw some big plays out of him, and Saquon Barkley was fed the ball. And Andrew Thomas, their tackle from last year, the first tackle that was taken, he did not have a good rookie season, but he's really bounced back and has been having a pretty good sophomore season so far. So encouraging win for the Giants for sure. I just don't know. Like it's like with the Saints, I just don't know
Yeah.
what to make of them. Week they look legit, one week they don't, and they're losing to the Giants. I just don't get it. And I think that's really, what we can expect to see out of a team with Jameis Winston. You don't know what you're gonna get from him week in and week out.
Yeah, and with the Giants, as you said, very encouraging win. They got the Cowboys next week, so we'll definitely see if the Giants pull off this win, maybe they are a legit contender, kind of like the with 6 wins at the end of last year, winning the division, or if they're still very far away, and this was just a flash in the pan. And yeah, you nailed it with Jameis Winston and the Saints. You just don't know what you're going to get, and that's not good when you're in a division with Tom Brady and in a tough NFC for sure. And now, good news if you are a New York football fan. Both teams won in overtime. Now we are moving on to the Jets and Titans. Jets win 27-24 in overtime. Titans miss a field goal with 19 seconds left to go for the tie, which was kind of interesting to me. Vrabel, to me, doesn't seem like a tie kind of person, seems like a go for the win. But as we said, a couple of games ago with the Bills, good teams, great teams put away lesser opponents, and the Tennessee Titans could not do that. Yes, they were without Julio Jones and AJ Brown, but Derrick Henry still had like 180 yards rushing, and they were still moving the ball. But this Titans defense is not as good as it was. And even last year, it wasn't fantastic either. But you added Bud Dupree, and we all were predicting that that was kind of like one of the final pieces that they needed. And Zach Wilson looked great. And he's my pick for offensive rookie of the year. He was making some great throws, getting it into some tight windows. So it's a much deserving win. But sheesh, like, great teams can miss their top 2 wide receivers or 2 of the top 3 offensive playmakers and still win a football game. So what's up with the Titans, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real rough game by the Titans. I mean, I love to see it because it keeps the Colts alive in that division, and makes them want to compete more and keep playing Carson Wentz. So you love to see that. But I mean, this Titans team, I think we have overrated them to a degree. I mean, we talk about how Mike Vrabel is a defensive guy and he should be able to get this defense, to competent level, but you just allowed Zach Wilson, the Jets, to have their best offensive performance of the season so far and get their first win. So, just very, very discouraging for that defense. And, on offense, like you said, I mean, they found a way to move the ball with Derrick Henry, despite the whole world knowing Derrick Henry was just going to get fed this entire game. And they still weren't able to pull out the win. So, just a very, very discouraging loss for the Titans. They really got to take a look in the mirror and see, what kind of team they are. Because right now, it seems like, they might be able to win a bad division, but not really go anywhere. And I think it's time for us to start putting some disrespect on this division after we just go in on the Eagles and the NFC East last season and how bad a division it is. Texans and Jaguars, terrible. Colts are, just going to be in this funk with Carson Wentz for the foreseeable future.
Well, they're
Titans
bad.
don't look like they're legit. I agree. The Colts are bad as well. Titans just lost to the Jets and, are showing consistent. This is a bad division. We're not talking about it enough.
Yeah, and I think that'll happen eventually, Joe. I mean, we're only in week 4, especially if the Jaguars do beat the Titans this week, and that entire division is 1-5, 2-4. Yeah, people are going to be talking about it, which is going to be very interesting as well for the AFC wild card picture between teams like the Ravens, the Browns, the Chargers, even the Raiders. Hell, maybe even the Bengals right now. They're in it.
Right.
Getting that 5th seed is absolutely huge. If you're maybe a team like the Ravens, Browns, Chargers in the wild card that maybe the Chiefs pull away or the Browns pull away or the Ravens pull away, you need that 5th seed because you are at the AFC South in week 1. Obviously, that happened with the Ravens last year, and it was a close game. But this year, probably not going to be a close game. So that 5th seed is crucial for an AFC wildcard team. And again, props to the Jets. I mean, their defense has been pretty decent so far under Robert Saleh this year. It's just that,
Yeah.
they're losing games 23-0, 24-0. You don't really talk about, oh, well, the defense only held them to, a couple of TDs or a bunch of field goals. So shout out to the Jets getting their first win. Titans need a lot of work and they need to be healthy as well. And so now it's time for your Philadelphia Eagles playing the Kansas City Chiefs at home. Andy Reid gets his 100th win as the Chiefs head coach. I believe like 240th, 241st overall in the NFL. Chiefs win 42-30. Chiefs didn't even punt, so the punter got a free trip. Well, I guess he might be the holder, but free trip to Philadelphia, always nice. Probably got himself a nice
Eagles did not punt either.
Eagles didn't punt either. Okay,
no punts at all in this entire game.
And now, Joe, I'll let you talk about the Eagles, but my only question is Tyreek Hill. Why did you put a linebacker on him?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Tim. I just got shades of that game against the Steelers last year when Nate Gary was covering Chase Claypool and he scored 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's a completely different defensive coordinator and a different scheme. And, we're still having the exact same thing happening with a linebacker on a team's best receiver. So I can't explain it. Jonathan Gannon says that we don't really run dime, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't run dime when Tyreek Hill's out there, or at least run a different coverage so Eric Wilson's not matched up on him. But yeah, that's the big story is this defense is just it's allowed over 80 points the last 2 weeks. I think 35 points to the Cowboys last week and over 40 points this week to the Chiefs. So, definitely not good for the defense or my prediction about this being a top 10 defense. I don't know how much the Brandon Graham injury acted things, but, Fletcher Cox is having the worst start of his career. He has not recorded like any stats at all. Same with Ryan Kerrigan, who's looking like he's washed. Derek Barnett is good for a stupid penalty and an important moment every game. He's still got more penalties than sacks, and he keeps adding to that total. Darius Slay in the secondary, I mean, nobody's really making a play, but also like we're playing such a weird defense where it's soft coverage and trying not to allow the big play that teams can just hit the underneath routes or just run the ball on us so easily. And then we do just allow the big play to Tyreek Hill. So, you love to see that. On the flip side, it was encouraging to see Jalen Hurts and the offense bounce back after a really terrible performance against Dallas. Let's keep in mind, this is a really bad Kansas City Chiefs defense. So, I was hoping to see a bounce back performance, and, Devontae Smith had a great game, went over 100 yards. That was his first 100-yard game. Jalen Hurts, once again, very good game statistically. Watching the game, there's, kind of 2 schools of thoughts with the Eagles fans. This was a phenomenal game by Jalen Hurts. He threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushed for almost 50 yards, no turnovers, and, scored over 30 points. Defense has to do something. Someone else has to do something. The other school of thought is there were a lot of missed plays in this game by Jalen Hurts where we could have came away with touchdowns instead of field goals. On our first drive to the red zone, he had Zach Ertz wide open on a seam route, just missed him, ended up having to settle for a field goal. And then later in the game, another third down and goal, and he misses Greg Ward, hits him wide on an out route, and we have to settle for a field goal there. So there were a couple plays like that where he's missing guys or running a little too early. So a little bit, kind of you get these good moments from Jalen, but you also get these inconsistencies and
Mhm.
sometimes not as accurate throws. Um, so it's a kind of a tough pill to swallow. I'd like to see a guy be able to hit those throws consistently, but we also have to keep in mind this was his eighth start. He's still a young player, still growing. Still gaining chemistry with a lot of guys in a new system. So still jury's still out with Jalen Hurts. It was, not a definitive performance, which is unfortunate because we want definitive answers with Jalen Hurts this season. Um, Definitely some concern about Nick Sirianni and his play calling, though. We got to go for it on fourth down to beat a team like the Chiefs. And there were a couple occasions where you chose to kick field goal rather than touchdowns, and you're not going to beat a team like the Chiefs kicking field goals. So I don't understand some of the logic and some of the calls. So would like to see a little bit more aggressiveness and consistency out of Nick Sirianni. But overall with the play calling, a lot of guys running open, really good schemes to get receivers open. So kind of a lot of up and down to take away from this game. It was a close-ish game, but I never really felt like we were pushing the Chiefs or making them nervous. It still felt like the Chiefs were in control this entire game.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you mentioned some of the fourth down calls because you are right. You're not going to beat a team like the Chiefs with field goals. And after seeing the last 2 weeks against the Chargers and the
Exactly.
Ravens, two teams who went for it on fourth down to prevent Patrick Mahomes from getting football. Sure, not maybe first drive, yeah, 3-0. Like, let's go up. Sure, no problem. But then when it's to make it 17-6 or 24-13, it's like we kind of need to make this game 24-17, coach, not 24-13 or whatever the score is. So definitely agree with you on that. But hey, Eagles have a good matchup against the Panthers this coming week as you'll be there. So that's going to be a fun game to watch. I think we'll definitely predict that on Saturday. Chiefs have the Bills, as we mentioned, at home Sunday Night Football. And now to the Red Zone did not show this game very often. Game of the week. We got the Browns defeating the Vikings 14-7. Browns had two field goals, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. Vikings got a touchdown early on. But yeah, Joe, this was an ugly game, needless to say. Browns do pull out the victory. They just kind of whittled the Vikings defense down with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and they just took the lead, especially with the way that their defense is playing. It's all they really needed. Run the ball, get in, get out, got the win, moving on to next week. But Joe, Browns Vikings, this was a stinker.
Yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield said this was one of the worst games that he's had, and probably was the worst game he's had in the last 2 years. So props to the Browns defense really shutting down, an offense that had been humming the last couple weeks. I mean, this Browns defense has been just, annihilating every team that they've so far this season. Really just shutting down the opposing offense. And, you know, again, it just kind of speaks to, the way that this Browns roster is built. Play good defense, run the ball well, have a good, strong O line, and you can win these ugly games. I mean, that's how the Browns are essentially built to win. But, when Baker is on and Jarvis and Odell are at their best, I mean, this can be an explosive offense as well. But I think that this really just kind of speaks to how this is the Browns identity, in terms of this is how they're going to win games, especially against quality opponents. So I thought it was you know for Baker having a bad game and them still being able to come away with the win and win like this. I was a little bit more impressed than I think people give them credit for.
Yeah, and we'll definitely see the Browns defense in full action playing the Chargers in this week. Of course, they did play the Chiefs, but the Chiefs scored a bunch of points. But there are other couple wins: the Texans, the Vikings, the Bears. Not playing the greatest of offenses. So we'll see this week as they go on the road to the Chargers, I believe. So that'll be a fun matchup for the defense. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week. The Vikings look good, but then we looked at their schedule and we were like, "Oh boy, this is going to be a rough season for the Vikings in the next couple of weeks." For sure. And now It's time for the Philadelphia Eagles first round pick bowl as the Colts defeat the Dolphins 27-17. Joe, this is one of the two games that we separated. So you are now a game up on me. The Colts moved the ball well. Jonathan Taylor over 100 yards with the touchdown. They got the running going. Jacoby Brissett looked okay. Scored some points here and there, but not enough to beat the Colts. And Carson Wentz is still the starting quarterback for the Colts. And currently the Eagles, if the season ended today and the draft was tomorrow, 5th, 7th, and 8th picks. And that's good news for you, Joe, because as you just said, you guys need a lot of help and a lot of picks early on for sure. But Colts
That's
defeat
right.
the Dolphins 27-17. Joe, what were your thoughts on this game?
I mean, I really didn't have a ton of thoughts on it outside of, Jacoby Brissett was starting, and I felt like the Colts defense was going to do well. I mean, I didn't think that the Dolphins offense was going to move the ball consistently or much at all against this Colts defense. And while I do think the Dolphins defense is pretty good, when you're on the field the entire game and going up against a strong running attack like
Mhm.
the Colts and have with Jonathan Taylor and their offensive line, that's it's a long day for that defense, and they'll eventually get worn down. So that's really what we saw. Wentz played fine. You know, like you said, Jonathan Taylor had a big game, and that's really the formula for Wentz to be successful. I mean, you got to have success in the run game so that there's not as much pressure on him. And he wasn't asked to do too much in this game, and he got away with the win. And like you said, that's exactly what the Eagles needed. So now the Colts will keep starting Carson Wentz. With the Titans loss, they're right there with the division. And we're what, 4 games in, and he's played 98% of the snaps. So we just need 8 more games like that, and I think it's either 8 or 9 more games, and then we'll get it. Yeah,
Yeah, based on the numbers that I crunched, just based on their total plays divided by 4, multiplied by, and all that stuff, it came out to, I think, 11.9 games. So, yeah, another 8 more games with Carson Wentz getting 99, 100% of the snaps. Should lock it in, unless, of course, they're just like, this ain't happening. He's not the starting quarterback. We're going to run 100 plays each game, like no huddle, like all this stuff. Um,
and I just don't think that they can do that if they want to give him another shot next year. I mean, we see how fragile this guy's ego is. If they bench him to preserve that draft pick, while it makes sense from a logical perspective to preserve that pick, it's really gonna shatter that relationship with Carson Wentz. And who knows how he'll do next year. Or now if they decide that they don't want to start him next year and they want to try to move on from him if they can, or bring someone else in, then that's a different discussion altogether. But if they do end up benching him at some point this season, then I think you're closing the door on a potential future long term with Carson Wentz.
yeah, and you don't make that type of trade and not use him as your quarterback for sure. But Colts defeat the Dolphins. Dolphins do get a couple of easier games coming up for them, especially in not a weaker division, but they already beat the Patriots. They got the Jets coming up a couple of times, so Dolphins should be able to bounce back and get themselves back in the AFC wildcard race. And now two NFC teams. The game that we decided was game of the day for the 1 o'clock slate, which ended up kind of being that. The Cowboys defeated the Panthers 36-28. Dak Prescott was very efficient with his throws, only 15, 16 completions, under 200 yards or right around 200 yards, but threw like 4 or 5 touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott had a good day running the football again. Panthers look good. Panthers have the leading rushing TDs person on their team, and it's not Chris McCaffrey. It is Sam Darnold. Panthers defense also, they just traded for Stephon Gilmore today, a huge trade to bolster up that secondary. And I think my concern, Joe, is the Cowboys went up pretty big and the Panthers kind of clawed their way back, especially in the third and fourth quarters. And we saw that last year when Dak was healthy in those first 5 or 6 games where Dak would go up kind of big, a couple of scores, and then this Cowboys defense just kept falling apart in the fourth quarter to make it a football game. They ended up losing a bunch of them. So that's my concern too. And they just released Jalen Smith, the linebacker. So it's like Cowboys defense still needs a lot of work. Now, good news is they have Dak Prescott and they can score a bunch of points. But Joe, what were your thoughts from this Cowboys Panthers game?
Yeah, watching, some of the game, I didn't really feel like it was as close as the score showed. It
Mhm.
seemed like the Cowboys kind of were in control this entire game, unfortunately. I mean, they were able to just move the ball at will, kind of all over, whether it was Amari Cooper catching a deep touchdown, Ezekiel Elliott pounding away, Tony Pollard getting mixed in there. They were really able to spread the ball around and, just move the ball at will and keep scoring points. And this Panthers defense that has been very highly touted wasn't able to really do enough. And then while they were, I think at the beginning it was like 14-7 or something, and then I want to say the Cowboys started pulling away with it, and then the Panthers ended up kind of scoring almost like garbage time points. It was a little bit earlier
Mhm.
than it's pure garbage time, I guess. But it just didn't really seem like the uh the Panthers were in a lot of you know it wasn't as close as the score was at the final game. So I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to see a little bit more out of the Panthers, but that's kind of unfortunately why I end up going with the Cowboys, with them playing well against Tampa Bay, beating the Chargers, and destroying the Eagles. They've played some better teams than the Panthers have had to deal with so far, and that's the best offense they've had to play. You know, their defense, while has a lot of guys, without J.C. Horn, maybe they felt like they needed to make a move and go get Stephon Gilmore so they can slow down these really good passing attacks. I mean, when Stephon Gilmore's healthy, when J.C. Horn's healthy, there are so many stud corners on this Carolina roster. I mean, think about it. I mean, those two, C.J. Henderson, they just got from Jacksonville. He was the number 9
Mhm.
overall pick last year. Dante Jackson, who I think was like a second round pick, very athletic playmaking corner. And then they've also got AJ Boye, which I forgot about, who they signed from Jacksonville.
Houston, I
Um,
think, right?
or maybe they got, I know he was on both Jacksonville and Houston. Now
Yeah,
I think of it, I think he was on Denver
that
last,
yeah,
and
mhm.
and they got him from Denver. Um, so I mean, that's just a stacked corner room. I don't know how that's all going to work in terms of playing time and contracts in the future. But right now, I mean, it's an interesting move because Gilmore's a little bit older. He's more expensive. It seems like a win now type of move for a Panthers team that, while they're 3-1, I don't know if they're really a Super Bowl caliber team right now unless that defense is playing like at an elite level. And maybe Stephon Gilmore's that difference maker, but I don't really see it this year, Tim. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think it was a great trade for them. I even mentioned it in our fantasy chat that this was a very smart move on the Panthers because while they might be thinking, yes, win now or compete this year, they're also thinking in the future as well. I mean, the Saints and Falcons seem to be trending down because the Falcons are going to get a new quarterback likely in next year's draft, but they're going to go some new quarterback next year. Saints, God knows what Sean Payton's going to do with Taysom Hill and that
Right.
quarterback situation as well. So the Panthers are putting themselves in a position to not only compete with the Buccaneers, but maybe even let's say if Tom does retire this year or sometime soon, they're putting themselves in a position to be that dominant team in the NFC South. And even this year, Joe, I predicted them to go to the playoffs at 3-1 right now, and their GM was probably looking, saying, "Hey, if we go 3-1 against the Saints and Falcons, that's 6 wins right there. You still have the Giants, the football team, the Eagle. There's a lot of
Right.
ways for them to get to that 9-10 win mark, which probably will get them a wild card spot. So I like the move. And a thing to note as well, the Panthers' new GM, I don't know the name off the top of his head, but he's made I think 11 or 12 trades in the 2021 calendar year whenever he was named the GM in December, January, February. The Panthers made like 4 trades in the last like 3 years. So he's moving around the roster and he's putting the pieces together for what seems like be like a successful team. And you mentioned Stephon Gilmore's age, but still him being in that room with some of these younger guys like CJ Henderson
Yeah.
and JC Horn, that is just huge veteran leadership from defensive player of the year from a couple of years ago. So it's not like this is
Yeah.
some washed up guy. He still probably has a couple of years left in him. And it's going to be exciting to see what's coming with the Panthers and a move that was much needed. But again, that's why we both picked the Cowboys. We just like their offensive weapons a little bit more, and they pulled out the win. Let's see. And now 4 o'clock slate, we got the Seahawks defeating the 49ers 28-21. The second of two games that we were separated for. So you got a 2-game lead on me this week. Congratulations, Joe. The Seahawks win 28-21. They pulled the opposite. They scored their points in the second half, not the first half. And Jimmy G got hurt at halftime. Trey Lance started the second half. Liked what I saw from him. So I'm very excited to see once he has a full week as the number one quarterback in practice, see what he can actually do. We've seen some flashes as him, but obviously was still making some rookie mistakes. And at the end of the day, when you have Russell Wilson versus a rookie quarterback just being thrown in to start the second half, it was over at that point. I mean, you got to go with Russell
Yeah.
Wilson in that one. So the Seahawks pull it off. 49ers tried to crawl back with Trey Lance, but at the end of the day, Seahawks pulled out the 7-point victory.
Yeah, it was a really good game. I mean, they did make it close at the end. I mean, Seahawks allowed, what was it, a 79-yard touchdown to Debo
Mhm.
Samuel, something like that. So that was
Yeah.
great for you against me in fantasy, Tim. Love to see it. Um, so it was a great game. It was a divisional game. Russell Wilson, he had some really special plays, spinning away and hitting, I think, Freddie Swain. Just a lot of big plays left and right. This 49ers defense has to be able to slow down a Russell Wilson
Mhm.
and guys. I mean, we talked about how their secondary is so banged up and how that's our concern with this division. Full of Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford. This defense has to be elite, and they really just weren't this week, and couldn't really make up for the deficiencies on the other side of the ball. And I really think that's just going to be their concern for a lot of this season. I mean, you know, I like Trey Lance getting in there. I do like seeing the what he brings to the table and the potential that he has. And I think that gives them the most upside on the offensive side of the ball.
Mhm.
But it sounds like Jimmy G might be starting this week. I think he's questionable as of now. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out because a Jimmy G injury. I mean, that's you know that kind of spells doom for the rest of his career in San Francisco. If it's
Yeah.
a long-term injury, Trey Lance gets in there and shows a little bit of what he can do, and the 49ers start winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that they have the Cardinals this week. So not the ideal matchup. And speaking of those Arizona Cardinals, Joe, they are the lone remaining undefeated team in the NFL. They are 4-0 by demolishing the Rams, who we thought was the best team. They beat the Buccaneers last week.
Yeah,
And we were like, everybody was like, this is now the new best team in football. It was the Rams. Cardinals come into town, win 37-20, wasn't even close, had no shot. Stafford had an early interception. And from that point on, rest assured, game was over. So Cardinals win 37-20. We did not get this right. So, Joe, I think the big question is, are the Cardinals legit? Like, and the same question we had about the Rams last week. Are they now a legit threat in the NFC, or did they just win this game?
I it's just so hard to tell with the Cardinals. I mean, didn't they start out so hot last
Yeah,
year
I
as
think they were
well? Like
5-1 or 6-1, and then Kyler was injured for a couple of games, and then they were like 6-3, 6-4, and they could just never bounce back.
exactly. Yeah, that's just my concern. Like, is this sustainable? I mean, he's playing so well right now. He's spreading the ball around. I mean, that offense is looking unstoppable. And I mean, Kyler when he's healthy, like that that run he had for the first down on 3rd and 16 where the defense played it perfectly. He was there and oh, I just got a red alert, Tim. Breaking news live on the Flea Flicker. Packers are finalizing a deal with formerly released linebacker Jalen Smith from the Cowboys.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, much needed
a
for the
little bit of help
Packers.
on the
Yeah.
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, where was I, Tim? I totally lost my train of thought.
Cardinals being a legit threat, or
Yes,
just a hot
I
start.
just don't I just don't know. Kyler brings so much to the table, and he's so electric. Like when he's
Mhm.
healthy, they have so many offense. Like DeAndre Hopkins is not even like the featured receiver right now. They're just spreading the ball around to everyone every week. I just don't know. I mean, it seems like they're legit, but I just don't know how it's gonna look as the season progresses. So I'm cautiously optimistic about them, and I mean, it's a divisional game. Cliff Kingsbury and Sean McVay, they know each other very well. So, you got the better of them this time. Um, I still think that the Rams are just also, such a more veteran team and,
Mhm.
can kind of handle success a little bit better. So it'll be interesting to see how they both bounce back this week. How the Cardinals do, flying high now, like you said, the only 4-0 team. They just beat who everyone thought was the best team in the league, and now they're being named the best team in the league. How are they going to follow up that performance now against San Francisco, another divisional opponent?
Yeah, and we'll get to the Rams in just a couple of games there. The Thursday night game, and that was McVay's first loss against the Cardinals. He was previously 8-0, so just a huge milestone. Kyler Murray and that offense looks great. They are now, Joe. Here's a fun stat for you. They are, I believe, the fourth or fifth. I think the fifth team to start 4-0 and score more than 30 points. The previous teams, 2002 Raiders lost the Super Bowl. 2007 Patriots lost the
Yeah,
Super
I
Bowl.
did see this.
2001 Patriots lost the Super, should have lost the AFC Championship game, but lost the Super Bowl. And so another team that ended up losing the Super Bowl as well. I forget who it was. Oh, there was the Broncos. It was Manning's Broncos in 2013. So the previous four teams all lost the Super Bowl. But hey, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm not saying that there's any, positives, but making the Super Bowl, nobody thought they'd be making the Super
Right.
Bowl this year. And especially given the state of the AFC right now with the Chiefs defense, the potential, Browns. Well, the Cardinals do play the Browns in a couple weeks, so that'll be a fun game to see. So
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
we'll see about the Cardinals. I think the Rams will bounce back big time, as you said that they're more professional. But now moving on from the Cardinals and the Rams in the NFC West, we got the Ravens going on the road to Denver. My Baltimore Ravens defeating the Broncos 23-7. Uh, as expected, we thought we were going to win. I said it was going to remind me of the Colts game last year, where by no means will it look like that we're just absolutely pummeling this team, but we're going to win by a couple of scores, and that's what we did. Hollywood Brown finally decided to catch the football for a nice long touchdown. Defense stepped up big time. No turnovers until the end. That's still a little factor for our defense, but we got the win. Lamar over 300 passing yards. We were running the ball pretty well. Le'Veon Bell got face mask that they called a holding on us. I don't know why they just couldn't offset the penalties. And the Ravens now tied the record for 100 rushing yards in consecutive games. I think it's 42 or 43 right now, and we'll get the record Monday night against the Colts for sure. And Teddy Bridgewater got concussed, so we saw some Drew Lock, which wasn't that fantastic. But Joe, your thoughts on the Ravens and Broncos game?
yeah, it was kind of like we previewed going into this game. The Broncos haven't faced anyone that's
Mhm.
really legit so far. This offense has, not faced a good defense. So they've been doing well, especially when their defense has been playing so well against pretty poor offenses. So,
Mhm.
now facing a team that has a very good defense and a very good offense, it's this defense can only do so much. And, when your offense can only score 7 points and not put together sustained drives, then this is kind of going to be the result. So, like we said, I think the Broncos are a good team. I think they're probably just above average,
Mhm.
but they're just they're not they're not good enough to compete with the best teams in the AFC. They're just beating up on the bad teams, which is fine. I mean, they're
Right. Hey, win
I
the
think
games
I
on your
think they're
schedule.
exactly, but I will say, while I've liked Vic Fangio, I thought it was pretty weak of him, to be complaining about the Ravens, going for the record after the game. I
And my
thought
thing,
it was real weak. I
my
love
th-
John Harbaugh coming back
yeah.
and roasting him. It was great.
Well, first of all, he said player safety. He called his three timeouts in the final 30 seconds to get a garbage time touchdown. Somebody pulled up last year. They played the Dolphins. They were winning and they were about to take a knee, and Drew Lock just spun around and threw it to a wide open receiver to maybe get a 80-yard touchdown or passing yards or whatever. And so that's a concern. Now, and then on the Ravens side, if we needed 3 yards, right? If we needed like 15 and we tried for it, all right, sure. Or
Yeah.
but like we needed 3 yards. It's not like we needed 80 yards and we were, blitzing and trying to get the ball back as quickly as possible to just run the ball. We just needed 3 yards. And I mean, especially from a guy like Vic Fangio, like like he was like, that's just player safety. It's like, bro, your own team like was doing some questionable things as well. So
Exactly.
it is what it is. But and again, if we didn't need 3 yards, but maybe it was not to tie, and we were at like 33 games, and I think it's 43. If we were at like 33 games, yeah, sure, like but it was to tie the record,
Yeah,
and it was only
exactly.
3 yards.
And it's not like this doesn't happen with people uh, trying to get touches or plays for players to hit like bonuses. Like,
Right.
they need to get like a certain amount of catches or, touches or whatever it is to, get a little bit extra chimichanga. So, you gotta make that money. I love it by John Harbaugh. I mean, I really think that,
Mhm.
that does have an effect on your team and just kind of creates that bond. You're the team that's going to break this record, and you're just, I don't know. It adds to that emotional victory. That we're kind of been the theme for the Ravens right now.
Yeah, and
Beating the
and
Chiefs, the Lions, and now the
and
Broncos.
you can even look at it a couple of weeks or a couple of years ago against the Seahawks. We were like, you want to go for it on fourth down? I want to go for it on fourth down. Sweet. If you want to go, I want to go against the
Yeah,
Chiefs. You want to go? I mean, obviously we were going to go for it, but being like, you want to go for it? Sweet. You want to go for it? And then just having the trust. Obviously we have Justin Tucker, but being like, yeah, all right, cool. We'll kick a 66-yard field goal. Fuck it. Like we're going to make it. Like, so just that emotional come. And it's going to be interesting as well to see the Broncos play the Steelers in week 5, and both offenses are bad. Both defense are very good. I mean, the Broncos defense did well. They got some pressure on Lamar, a couple of sacks. So the Broncos defense against the Steelers offense and the Steelers defense against the Broncos offense might be a low scoring game, Joan, and we'll pick that game in a couple of days. And speaking of those Steelers, they went to Lambeau Field. Packers pull out a 27-17 victory. We finally got to see that Rodgers and Randall Cobb connection that we've all been trying to wait to see the first couple of weeks of the season. Once, especially, they traded for him, they got him for a couple of touchdowns from Randall Cobb. And I know I dropped him in a couple of leagues, so I was like, well, he hasn't done anything so far. So, of course, that happens the day after I drop him. And Steelers, did okay. Again, fourth down, they threw it to Najee. Like and even Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, was like, "We're going to keep calling it because that's what we do." It doesn't work. Probably shouldn't call
yeah,
it. But Packers pull out the win. Not too much I saw from the Steelers. Obviously, they did block a field goal at the end of the half. That got called back for offsides. Questionable call. It didn't look to be offsides, but you just, oh well, sucks to suck. But Packers pull
yeah.
out the victory. Joe, your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, not a ton of thoughts. I mean, the Steelers offense is just really bad. Ben is washed, O-line is bad, receivers are good, not great. Najee can't do it all himself. I mean,
Hmm.
and Najee, it's like I don't understand why they're asking this team's identity to be Najee and the defense carrying you to victories. Like that it just seems to me like that's what their game plan is because of the personnel that they have. And then not only that, but that's what they're doing. Like you said, checking the ball down to Najee Harris on fourth down, you know, fourth and 10. It's not like it's fourth and 2 and you're checking it down. You're fourth and long. You can't be checking it down to your running back behind the line of scrimmage
It's not even a
and,
check down.
just
That's the
hoping.
design play, is to throw it to the running back. Like it's
Yeah,
not even
it's
like
ridiculous.
everybody ran downfield and he was like, all right, cool, gotta throw to the running back. Now it's hike, boom, throwing it to you. Like just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and like I said, with the Steelers offense, that's really just all they can do. I mean, and that just hurts this defense so much because they're on the field all the time. Offense isn't putting together sustained drives. They're not scoring points. Defense is being asked to do so much, and eventually they're going to break, especially going up against a really good team or a really good offense and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and this Green Bay team. So ultimately at the end of the day, you got to be able to, you can't just have one unit carry you. Someone has to be able to help as well, especially when it's the offense that's this bad. That's always going to hurt a defense. You look at a team like the Chiefs, their offense is so good and their defense is so bad, they can win shootouts. But, now you look at the Steelers when their offense is this bad, your defense, you're asking them to win low scoring, ugly games every week. And that's just not doable or realistic to do on a regular basis, especially when you're facing an Aaron Rodgers. So Steelers got to get together. I think it's going to be a tough one against Denver, but like you said, I think it'll be an ugly game.
Yeah, and I was talking to our friend Josh a couple of weeks ago. Even said it on this show. The Steelers' defense is very good, almost elite. But if a team scores 20 points on them, that offense ain't scoring 20 points. So if you can get to 20 points, of course, with that blocked field goal or maybe a pick six, sure, the Steelers can definitely win some games. But they're not going to win many shootouts or many games scoring less than 20 points. So that's what it comes down to. And now to a team that won by scoring less than 20 points Sunday Night Football, Joe. Tom Brady pulls out the victory on the road in New England. Buccaneers win 19-17. It was raining, kind of an ugly game, very emotional. Antonio Brown dropped a couple of touchdowns to kind of really put the game away. Mac Jones looked good, 19 straight completions, although not much air yards. And I said this last week, he's very efficient, has a decent quarterback rating, but the most air yards was thrown by Jacoby Myers and the wide receiver. And in due time, I think they're kind of, letting Mac Jones get adjusted to the NFL before they start taking deep shots. But when we're seeing somebody like Zach Wilson or even Trevor Lawrence throwing it 30, 40 yards down the field, perfect window right there, that does bring a concern for Mac Jones. We haven't seen him really throw it deep yet. But then at the end of the day, Buccaneers pull it out. And I guess another thing is too, I think everybody except for Bill Belichick thought they were going to go for it. It was 4th and 3, 56-yard field goal in the pouring rain. Why would you send out Nick
Yeah.
Folk? No, Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker, Jason Myers, Jason Sanders. Sure, I would.
Nick Folk's been having a really good year and a
He,
really good
yeah, but
last
given the
couple games from last
circumstances,
year
I mean,
too.
fourth and
I agree.
three, like if
I
it was
agree.
4th and 10, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Send out the field goal. But when it's a manageable play,
And on top of that, I think there was still like over
yeah, if he
30
made
seconds
it,
left. It
you're
was like
giving Tom
50
Brady
seconds.
45 seconds. I think they had
Yeah,
one or two timeouts as well. Now, obviously, he wasn't playing that great, but that's very storybook of Tom Brady 45
exactly.
seconds.
Yeah,
And again, just to get in the field goal range as well. If they needed a touchdown, then it's like, all right, sure, maybe. But I really question that decision to kick the field goal there.
I agree completely, Tim. I will push back on your Mac Jones slander, not going deep. I mean, again, it's in the rain going up against, a good defense in Tampa Bay. I mean, they're without some secondary guys, but that front seven is still very, very strong. And, they get there
Yeah, but we
very
haven't
fast. So
seen it this
you
whole
got to get the.
season. Mac Jones has not been throwing
But
deep
again,
this entire season.
who are his deep threat receivers? We're talking Nelson Aguilar as your number one and Jacoby Myers.
Well,
Like,
sure, but I'm just saying,
Zach
the talk,
Wilson as Corey Davis, Trevor
right?
Lawrence had DJ Chark.
Sure.
He has Laviska Chenault. Like there are
But
some
people are
weapons
acting
there.
like that this is like the next Brady and he's going to be the next big thing. It's like when you're averaging like 4 air yards, it's kind of like I can't make that claim on a quarterback or give him rookie of the year. I could average 4 air yards and be pretty efficient. You know what I
But
mean? Like I can't, but I could.
wasn't that pretty comparable to what Brady was doing his last year in New England when these were the weapons that he had? I mean, like again, like are you I mean, it's a strong defensive line, so you got to get the ball out quick.
Right.
And on top of that, don't have good receivers throw the ball deep. I mean, Nelson Aguilar is a good route runner, questionable hands. He's not a possession receiver. You can't throw it up to him and go deep unless he's wide open. Jacoby Myers, I think, is kind of a similar type receiver. N'Keal Harry is probably your
Mhm.
possession type receiver, but to this point, he's been a bust. So, I mean, I think that, and this is what Mac Jones is good at.
Yeah.
That's his strengths. And again, in this type of game, I'm very impressed with what I've seen out
Oh,
of Mac
and
Jones
I'm
under
very
these
impressed as well. I'm
circumstances.
just saying we should probably hold back a little bit on he's the best rookie quarterback so far and he has like the best quarterback rating when he's doing things that most quarterbacks should be able to do it, and that's the scheme, that's his system, that's his play style. Absolutely, I would just like to see him take a couple of deep shots like we've seen
Oh yeah,
Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, even Trey Lance. I mean, granted, deep. My grandmother could hit Debo Samuel on that play,
right.
but yeah, it's just something that I would like to see because seeing people on Twitter and a lot of Boston fans being like, "Oh, we got the next Brady. Like we're back in this. Give us a year. Like we're gonna be just as good." It's not like, all right, hold on. He's throwing like 4 or 5 yards in the air. Let's calm down for a second. So I just want to see that out of him before I
I
can say,
agree.
hey,
I agree.
this is the rookie of the year. This is the best quarterback of this class so far.
I agree. But I mean, we're also ripping Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson
Mhm.
for turning the ball over a
Uh-huh.
lot, and a lot of those have been on deep shots. You know, Mac Jones, he's winning games. What are they, 2-2 now? Is that right?
They are one and
Or
three, I think.
they're 1-3?
They lost to the
Really?
Dolphins, they lost to the Saints, they lost to the Bucks, and they beat um who did they beat?
Dang, I didn't realize they only had one win.
Yeah, they're one
Yeah,
and three. Who did they beat? Jeez.
can't remember. Well, this is
I'm
why I
trying to
thought
not
that
look it up. So they lost to the Dolphins, they lost to the Saints, they lost to the
they beat the
Bucks.
Jets. They beat the Jets.
They beat
Yeah,
the Jets. They beat the Jets. That took a
yeah,
long time to figure out who they beat. But
yeah.
yes, they are one and three.
Yeah. So I mean, this is why I kind of felt like Mac Jones would be, of the rookie quarterbacks, he'd be like the most in contention for rookie of the year, just because he'll play on a better team. But they haven't to this point gotten the wins. Um, but also I didn't really feel like any of these rookie quarterbacks were going to light it up this year, and that's why I went
Right.
with Devontae Smith, who got his first 100-yard game. So hopefully he gets a bunch more. He's just got to outpace Jamar Chase, who's having a really good start to the season as well. So, we'll see how it goes. But it was a really good game in New England. You know, Bill Belichick and this Patriots defense, they did what they could to stymie Tom Brady and really slow him down and make him uncomfortable. They threw everything they could at him, and Brady did not go off against New England by any means. So,
No.
I thought that it was a very impressive performance by Bill Belichick and this Patriots team going up against a much more talented Tampa Bay team.
Yeah, absolutely. Tampa Bay is still going to be very good. So we already know that about them. And the good news for the Patriots is they have the Houston Texans next week. So maybe we will see a Mac Jones 20 plus yards down the field type of throw against the Houston Texans. So a good week to bounce back for the Patriots. And now Monday Night Football, Joe, we said before recording, we were both super tired on Monday, did not watch any of the game. But Chargers win 28-14 over the Raiders. Chargers look legit. Justin Herbert looks good. Austin Eckler looks good, getting a rushing touchdown and receiving touchdown. Donald Parham, one of their bigger receivers and kind of tight end receiver hybrid, he caught a touchdown. And Chargers defense and Brandon Staley, man, they stopped Derek Carr and an electric Raiders offense so far this season. So Chargers pull out the victory. And we're seeing with the Rams, it could be the loss of Brandon Staley because that Rams defense isn't as good. But Chargers pull it off, and you nailed it, Joe. I mean, they are ready to compete with the Chiefs and the rest of the AFC for not only the division crown but the AFC championship as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to continue to see a little bit more out of
Mhm.
the Chargers. I mean, I'm still not sold on the Raiders, being that good. I do think that the Chargers are a much better team than the Raiders, and
Mhm.
this game, they dominated them in pretty much every facet of the game. It really just wasn't close at all. I think that they got that second touchdown late in the game to make it a two-touchdown game. But overall, Justin Herbert, Brandon Staley, it just seems like a great match. This defense I think has held every offense they've played so far to their lowest point
Mhm.
total. And I'm very happy to see it in LA. After all the rough losses that they've accumulated over the past couple of years, I really like what I'm seeing out of Justin Herbert. And it's impressive that even when Mike Williams doesn't go off, Keenan Allen doesn't go off, have like a crazy good game. He's still able to have a really good game, multiple touchdowns, spread the ball around. Jared Cook getting involved. You already mentioned Donald Parham. It's just a really impressive of what we're seeing from Justin Herbert at such a young age. And I mean, right now he's looking like the best quarterback in that draft class that also had Joe Burrow and Tua go ahead of him. So, I'm really impressed with the Chargers. You know, I'm you know, I'm not necessarily disappointed with the Raiders because I thought they overachieved the first 3 weeks, and this is more in line with what I think the Raiders really are.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned the draft. I saw some guy tweet he got ripped. He got ratioed so hard because he was like, "Have we ever been more wrong on NFL draft Twitter about Justin Herbert?" Like, and everything, and everybody was like, You mean the number 6 pick. It was just so funny that everybody was like, "What do you mean wrong? Like he number six pick? Like, it'd be different
Right.
if we all like a Tom Brady situation, like sixth round guy. It's like, yeah, we might have been wrong on this guy, but this guy was the sixth pick, and people were arguing that he might have been picked ahead of Tua by the Charger or by the Dolphins, excuse me, or somebody might trade up to get Herbert. So it was very interesting to see that guy on Twitter. But yeah, as you mentioned as well with that stat of the lowest points, they got the Browns this week, and the Browns just scored 14 points. So definitely a tall task to continue that streak for the Chargers defense, and it's going to be a good matchup for sure. Can't wait to pick that game and to pick games now, Joe. We got Week 5 Thursday night football. Finally, we got a good Thursday night football game aside from the
Yes.
first game of the year with the defending Super Bowl champion. We got the Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks going with the highlighter neon green color rush uniforms. Rams are either going to go icy whites or maybe all blue. Who knows? I don't know. But the Rams are currently a 2.5 point road favorite. The over under is 54.5. Joe, can the Rams bounce back on a short week, and how do they bounce back if so?
Yeah, I think they are going to bounce back. I'm going to take the Rams in
Mhm.
this game. With it, I mean, coming off of a really rough loss against Arizona, and now facing another divisional opponent, they just really can't afford another loss within the division back to back like this. And I think that they match up very well against
Mhm.
Seattle on the defensive side of the ball. Aaron Donald is gonna wreak havoc on this suspect offensive line for Seattle. Jalen Ramsey is probably gonna erase DK Metcalf, and then the rest of the defense focuses on Tyler Lockett, and just kind of the supporting cast there. So I think that the Seattle offense is going to struggle in the past, couple of years when Russell Wilson has gone up against LA. He hasn't had his best performances. And, on the flip side, the Seattle defense is still not looking good. I think
Mhm.
it's a good week for the Rams offense to bounce back and get right once again. So yeah, I think that Russ is going to be asked to carry this Seahawks team to victory. And while he's capable of doing that, I think this is a game where he's going to turn the ball over a couple times. The Rams are going to capitalize and win this one pretty handily.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. I'm going with the Rams as well. I do expect them to bounce back because they can't afford to go 0-2 in the division. I think the Seattle defense is still pretty bad. I mean, Trey Lance almost mounted a comeback against them. Of course, Trey Lance very talented, but the Rams are more professional, just the better team, better offensive weapons. So I expect the Rams offense to bounce back against the Seattle defense. And you said it, Aaron Donald. This could be a good wake up game for that Rams defense. We haven't seen too much out of them this year, except for limiting Tom Brady a little bit. But I'm going with the Rams in this one. I think the Seahawks will put up a good fight for maybe the first half or something like that, and then they fall away in the second half. I mean, and we forgot to mention against the Rams game, we talk about the Rams running game. I mean, Daryl Henderson had like 14 carries for like 90, 95 yards and caught a couple of passes out of the backfield. So they're getting him more involved. They're definitely going to be running the ball a little bit. And I think, again, as we mentioned, for a couple of teams, this is especially on a short week, go in, win, get out. They don't need to win 35-10. Just win by 1 point, get out, get some extra rest for week 6. So I'm going with the Rams as well. Joe, any final words on week 4 or the Thursday night football game for week 5?
I think Chris Carson is questionable with the neck injury. I just
Ooh.
traded for him, so I really hope he plays because that would suck if he does not play. I'm facing James Taylor this week in my big money fantasy
Ooh.
league, and for whatever reason, every year I always beat James in fantasy. So this will be a get right week for me in a league in which I am currently 0-4. So I cannot wait to look forward to being at the Eagles and Panthers game with James and watching Devontae Smith score touchdowns for the Eagles against the Panthers and for my fantasy team against James. It's going to be
Hey,
amazing.
love to hear that. Love to hear that. And can't wait to hear some more pregame analysis for our picks coming out later this week for you guys. And I have no final words. I'll be at the Ravens Monday Night Football game as well. So we'll both be at our first NFL games for the 2021 season. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode, guys. If you haven't already, smash that thumbs up button to like this video and subscribe to our channel. That's Joey D over there. I'm Timmy B. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your days. We'll see you soon. Peace.